Hello, you're watching ProAct. I'm joined by VivoPower Advisory Council member Philip von Wulffen. We're discussing why AI is moving to the Nordics. Philip, very good to speak with you again. The Nordics are the obvious home for AI infrastructure. So what makes them the smartest place on earth to build it?
Hey, Stephen. Nice to be back. Nice to see you again. Thanks for having me. Fundamentally, I think the smartest place on earth is obviously a big statement. There are a couple of things you need for a data center. Traditionally, that was very focused on closeness to customers. So it was about fiber. It was about getting data moved around very quickly between the original request and the reply. With especially the training of AI, so inference heavy AI workloads, that's not relevant, right? You can keep a training of an AI pretty much offline for large parts of that. So suddenly, it's much more about finding locations that have the scale and the amount of power available to run very, very large training data centers. So that has been a shift. And then, of course, at the end of the day, it's a financial question. So low power cost plays a big role. The Nordics have abundant energy, green energy, very good infrastructure. These are all things that are advantageous in the Nordics. There are other places where AI will move. I mean, that there are crazy people out there talking about putting data centers in space. I find that early. Not sure what happens if your model is hit by some kind of space scrap or something like that, space trash. But obviously, then there are closer ones. For example, also in the desert, I think there are increasing efforts to make deserts viable. POEs are coming down there, etc. But the Nordics at the moment is the most attractive region probably to build data centers.
Philip, renewable energy is abundant across Europe. What makes Nordic energy specifically so attractive for running data centers at scale? And how are you positioned for this?
Well, number one, the Nordics have relied heavily on green energy. They have abundant energy from water. They have abundant energy from solar and wind, and because they're very large, spread out countries, they have had to develop energy grids really across large spaces for their spread out industry. So Finland has, for example, with FinGrid, a very strong energy network that spans the entire country. And that for us makes it very attractive to find sites from the vicinity of Helsinki all the way to the very far north, and that's really the advantage we found there. To be honest, at the end, you always have to be a bit lucky. We did a lot of research on where in Europe to begin our work, and stumbled into Finland as being attractive, and I think that was a very good timing. Finland has an incredible track record. They have a background of very strong political stability when it comes to data centers. The permitting is done in a very pragmatic way. So you have a level of reliability in Finland that you, for example, in countries, the rest of Europe often don't have, where you can have a finally financed and planned project, and then in the last instance, a town's board will decide no go, and then all of the pre-work and money that was spent is wasted. So that's something you don't have in specifically Finland. We're mainly in Finland with some Norwegian access and kind of some future in Sweden as well, but it's mainly been Finland. The next thing is obviously on the cooling side, POEs in the Nordics are lower, so we spend less on energy that goes to chips. I've mentioned the energy grid that's very strong, but also the price of power in Finland is highly attractive. So the cheap energy, which is critical for AI. But at the end of the day, one of the things that have been difficult in many regions is having neighbors. Having a data center as a neighbor is, can cause conflict. Let's put it that way. And when you have a big country with a lot of space like Finland, that changes the game quite a bit. I mean, if you're going to the far north, you just don't have maybe neighbors in your direct vicinity. I think a big other part is the social work. We have a very strong sort of personal codex around how we're using these sites to make sure that we're giving back to communities, etc., and making sure that they're not ridiculously ugly boxes that create an eyesore. But that is work that's us to do. I think there's a ton of work to be done on ESG. With vertical farming, we're very far in preparation for that. So far, the market is not fully willing to pay for it yet, but that's very close. The heat that comes off of data centers is a resource. It's not waste. It needs to be used for, and you have many applications for it. One other attractive thing in Finland is that you have municipal heating across the country. And almost all of our locations have already mapped out how close we are to the next municipal heating facility, where we can use the heat to provide cheap heat for the local housing. But that heat can also be used for many different industries. So from vegetable farming to even things like shrimp farming. So heat definitely needs to be reused. In some cases, quite interestingly, you have some heat that's needed by industry, so you can actually reduce their ESG footprint by using our heat. These are all things that need to move more towards net zero, and Finland has, or the Nordics have, a very, very strong ability to do that.
When Microsoft, Google, and Amazon choose where to put their hyperscale infrastructure, why do they keep on landing in the Nordics?
Yeah, I think for these reasons, and you're right. Over especially the last couple of years, there has been a strong move into these markets. I mean, they're also moving into the desert. They're working on projects in places like Saudi and Qatar and Abu Dhabi, and the global need for further capacity is absolutely certain. You can talk financial downturn up and down, but even if we do have a financial downturn, it means that companies need to lower their costs, and that means they're going to use more AI and create more data. So we're going to need more capacity for data. Over time, we're going to have to make that more efficient as well. I think chips will become more efficient. So a data center today, probably in 10 years, will be able to be much bigger using the same power. But these hyperscalers, as well as many local players, I mean, as a European, I'm always rooting for also getting some strong European players to grow in the market, like Mistral, where they're choosing the Nordics for the same reasons I just meant. It's a business plan question. Financially, it's attractive because you have the lower input cost. You might have lower development costs because of the fast permitting, let's say easier to deal with neighbors, etc. And of course, as well, I think the net zero and ESG topics. All of the companies that are today building data centers know that a substantial amount of investment and thought needs to be put into how to make these data centers as, let's say, ESG compatible as possible. We need them, and we don't want the populations to be against them, so they have to provide value for the populations. And if you're, I don't know, heating up the local water supply, that's a problem. Obviously, water use, we haven't mentioned. That's another thing that's developing very quickly. Traditionally, data centers, and they still have the reputation of needing really a lot of water that's purely wasted. That is becoming increasingly efficient, where today's data centers need much less water. And actually, more and more of the cooling is happening with liquids that have no loss. So you're using oils and other liquids that are more efficient at cooling chips, and these run in a circular system where you actually don't renew them. or not, at least not in that regularity. So I think the Nordics just is a very attractive place for, you mentioned now more hyperscalers, but in general, space for data centers.
Well, Philip, thanks again for all your insights. Very good speaking with you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. See you soon.
Very welcome. Philip von Wulffen. He is a VivoPower Advisory Council member.